I'm Jason, UFC, and today we have a story about UFC President Dana White confirms the UFC is planning to make Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight championship of the world at Madison Square Garden in New York. Dana White has confirmed Jon Jones teases of his first UFC heavyweight title defense versus Stipe Miocic will take place in Jon Jones' home state of New York. Jon Jones posted some tweets on social media during UFC on ESPN 44 event and said he's ready and waiting for the clash versus Stipe Miocic to be scheduled, and it could potentially go down at Madison Square Garden in New York City this fall. How cool would it be to spend my retirement fight dominating the greatest heavyweight of all time in my home state of Madison Square Garden? Question mark. The UFC makes an annual trip to the historic venue in November of each year, and Dana White, UFC president, said that that's where the promotion wants it to happen. That's interesting. As far as I know, everything is good, and hopefully we'll have a fight with Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic very soon. Dana White told MMA Junkie and other reporters at the post-fight UFC on ESPN 44. White recently stirred some headlines when he said, "Okay, let's move on from that." Okay, yeah, I mean, this is interesting because after I believe when did Jon Jones fight? Was that at UFC 285? I believe that was 285, right? Jon Jones defeated Cyril Gane to become the heavyweight champion of the world. His first fight, his debut fight in the heavyweight division in UFC, his heavyweight division. And then it seemed like all signs were pointing to Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic happening at UFC 290, right? International Fight Week here in Las Vegas, but that went really quiet like a day after, and like no one talked about that anymore. And recently, I believe UFC announced that Alexander Volkanovski will take on Yair Rodriguez. I guess that may be the main event of UFC 290, but it looks like Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic may happen later on, very, very later on this year, because the annual trip to New York, that's in November, right? That's like a November slot. UFC has still not announced Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler yet, so I don't think that's going to be at International Fight Week. The UFC wanted to have Leon Edwards fight in his home state at UFC 291. I believe that was going to be 291 in July, but I don't think he's going to fight. He says he wants to fight in Dubai. Islam Makhachev said he wants to fight in Dubai. Jon Jones says he wants to fight Stipe Miocic in November. So the UFC, they always create stars. They always do a great job, but it's going to be pretty, it's going to be tough the next few months, right? Like if you think of the first few months this year, we had Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. We had Jon Jones versus Cyril Gane. We had Leon Edwards versus Kamal Usman. We had Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. And then the next 3 or 4 pay-per-views is Henry Cejudo versus Aljamain Sterling, Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena 3, Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. These are going to be pretty tough sells for MMA casual fans like myself. The next 3, 4, 5 months. Maybe in September, the UFC may announce the Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler card, because if Jon Jones is not fighting in January and Leon Edwards is not, if Jon Jones is not fighting in July and Leon Edwards is not going to fight until October, Islam Makhachev is not going to fight until October. That basically leaves Israel Adesanya, right, being like the only champion open that could defend his belt in the summertime. So we'll see what the UFC does. I'm a little bit, I may be an MMA casual, but I don't understand why Stipe Miocic, after having not fought in 2 years, having got knocked out cold in his last fight, why is he getting this title shot? Like, what, is this John Jones demanding this fight, or is it Stipe Miocic like earning this title fight? Nothing against him, I mean, he's the greatest. He has the greatest run in UFC history in the heavyweight division. But I mean, am I wrong for saying if you got brutally knocked out cold in the second round of your last fight, that maybe you should come back after 2 years and win one fight or something like that? I don't know. But I think if Stipe Miocic and John Jones fight in Madison Square Garden in November, John Jones is going to probably easily defeat Stipe Miocic. Let me know your opinion of this story. Who do you think is going to win versus Stipe Miocic versus John Jones? And what do you think is going to happen in the next few months for the UFC after starting off pretty hot? First 4 months of this year, we saw a John Jones fight. We saw Islam Makhachev fight. We saw Leon Edwards fight. We saw Israel Adesanya fight. All 4 championship, really, really high-level championship fights. But the next few months is going to be a tough sell for... I'm going to watch it, but, for other MMA casual fans like myself. But I'm Jason, UFC. Today we had a story that UFC President Dana White confirms that the UFC is planning to make UFC Heavyweight Championship John Jones versus Stipe Miocic match at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button. And please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.